Well, hello, Timberline. It's Christmas Eve. And Christmas Eve is like the height of anticipation, right? Uh, the whole Christmas season is filled with this anticipation of Christmas Day, and maybe you're anticipating the giving of a gift to somebody that you're excited to be able to give them, or maybe you're excited about the gifts that you will receive as your families and friends exchange gifts back and forth and bless one another. Maybe you're just excited about family and gathering around the table and sharing bread together and enjoying fellowship as you celebrate and just think about the birth of Christ. And so this is a season of anticipation. And today on Christmas Eve, we come to our last Advent reading in the book of Luke, which is Luke chapter 24. And this chapter reminds us of the fact that the people of God throughout all of history leading up to this moment of Jesus' birth, they were anticipating and looking forward to and longing to see the day in which God's Messiah would come and he would rescue his people. And so they were so excited about this. And in fact, we see this unfold in Luke 24 because the events of the previous weekend, Jesus' death and his burial and his resurrection have taken place, and the disciples, they're just not quite sure what to make of all this. And the women have gone to the tomb. They found him not there. The angels have spoken to them that he is risen, and they've gone back and told the disciples. The disciples came to the tomb. They didn't find Jesus there, but they found it empty. And they're a little bit confused and wondering, what is it that's actually taken place here, right? And so there's a few disciples in Luke 24. They're walking on this Emmaus road, and they're talking about the things that have taken place. And Jesus strolls up, it says, beside them, and he begins to ask them, hey, what are you guys talking about? And in fact, the passage says that they were kept, probably by God himself, kept from actually seeing who Jesus was. And so they say, well, we're talking about the things that happened this last weekend. And Jesus says, well, what things? And they're kind of confused by that because they're like, haven't you been around? Like, everybody knows what just happened this last weekend. Everybody knows about the crucifixion of Jesus and this whole spectacle that took place. And Jesus says, no, tell me about it. And so they begin to tell Jesus, like, well, this Jesus of Nazareth, he was like a prophet who was mighty in deed and the words of God. They said that you could almost feel the frustration, our own religious leaders, our own chief priests, they delivered him up to be crucified. And then listen to what they said. They said, but we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. You see, they were excited and anticipating that Jesus was the one. They had been waiting for this their whole lives, and now they're seeing this Jesus. They saw his life. They heard his words, and they're saying, this is the one. They were anticipating it. And now their own religious leaders, they hand him over and he's crucified, right? And they're just confused and frustrated. And Jesus says to them, "O foolish ones, how slow of heart you are to believe all that the scriptures have said." That's an incredible statement. And then it says that Jesus, beginning with Moses, and he went through all of the prophets, he's explained how all of these things concerning himself. Can you imagine what that would have been like? All of these things concerning himself. He began to open up the scriptures for them. In fact, a few verses later, it says that when he was speaking, their hearts were bursting inside of them. There was this burning. They, for the first time, all of the dots were getting connected. These passages of scripture that they had known and read and heard taught all of their lives, all of a sudden, the dots were connected and things came together, and they began to see that this was all about Jesus. And all of these events of this last weekend, this is exactly what the scriptures pointed to. Can you imagine how their eyes were opened and everything all of a sudden came together and they were just blown away? And it says they got to their location and Jesus was going to go on, but they begged him, please stay with us. And then it says they were sitting around the table, and it says that Jesus began to take bread and he broke it and he gave thanks. And in that moment of breaking bread, I don't think that's a mistake. It says that they saw who his was. Their eyes were opened and they realized that it's him. It's Jesus. And then it says he vanished. And what did they do? They ran and found all the others, and they told them the story of what had happened. They said, you're not going to believe this. He's alive. He is risen. And they went and they told the story. I pray that we too have that same joy, like children reading these things for the very first time, that our eyes would be opened to see the wonder and the awe of this incredible gift of Jesus, the Messiah who's come to redeem us from sin and death and hell. I pray that that's what drives you this Christmas. That's what encourages you, because this Jesus, the Jesus who all of history is about, everything in history ultimately is about Jesus, the Jesus who fulfilled all of the prophets that Jesus explained to them, all of these prophecies, every little detail of his life and his death and his burial and his resurrection and his ascension, all of it is in fulfillment to exactly what prophets had spoken of for thousands of years. And this Jesus also uniquely conquered death by rising from the dead. You see, as we sat around our Christmas tables, our anticipation, we see it differently, right? Because we know that Jesus has conquered sin and death, that he has died, but he was raised to life, that he's alive. But we also have another anticipation, something that we are longing for and should long for until the day that it happens, and that is the second coming of Christ, when he will come again. And he will make all things new. And we, too, are those who would hope and long for that day to come. May God bless you, Timberline. May you have a Merry Christmas.